Hello, newsies. Hey, welcome to another episode of Get the Flick Out of Here. I'm your host, Alex Pulaski, and with me is the other host, Kate Elizabeth. Um,
Hi,
so,
Alex.
hi, Kate. Um, Hello, everybody out there in TV land. Um, so, uh, there was a phenomenon in the '80s of cute things that talked that shouldn't. That was just like a major deal. Um, and
Fuzzy
and
tomatoes.
right, a lot of things like that. And part of that phenomenon is today's movie, Short Circuit, which um, which I grew up on and loved, and probably watched. God, I don't know, 15, 20 times a year through the late '80s. Like, me and my brother loved this movie so much we would quote it when it wasn't playing. Um, it spawned a less successful sequel that I
It
probably
did.
have seen two or three times in my life, and not for 20 years or so. Um, this is a tough one for me to be correctly objective about, because I associate it so much with fun stuff when I was a kid. Um, but it is one of those things like, oh yeah, no, you definitely couldn't do that now. That's the thing you can't do now. Um, but it is absolutely a weird flick. Um,
It is
uh,
definitely a weird little flick.
It is definitely a weird little flick. You, however, were not as familiar with this going in.
No.
So I want to hear your overall first viewing thoughts of about this film.
Well, it was nice to do one with a robot that was cute. Because the
Yes.
Mac could be like, stuff wasn't cute.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes there's just swings and a miss with the
Mm.
cuteness level. This was pretty
Mm-hmm.
cute.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was so I understand exactly where you're coming from. Like, it was not good, but it did bring back. I don't like remember seeing it a ton as a kid. I definitely
Mm-hmm.
remember having seen pieces of it,
Mm-hmm.
but like, this is one of those ones where I'm like, this isn't a good movie, but I like it. It makes me feel good.
Yes, it is a feel good movie. And it is also like going back and watching it for the first time in what has to be over a decade. I was struck immediately by the setup of it, of being, it's trying to be, I don't know, political in a very odd way. It's very timely, like the themes of it. It is attempting to have a message beyond, here is a cute talking robot. Um,
It didn't need to do that.
no, no, it didn't. But I honestly, like, I appreciate it attempting, considering like that must have been a hard thing for them to get through in Reagan era Hollywood. Like,
Yeah.
the year before this came out, Red Dawn came out. You know what I mean? Like, there was a
Yeah.
very specific subsect of Hollywood that was like, um uh we we hope that the Russians give the Cubans a bunch of money to parachute into a small Colorado town so that we can then shoot all of them with our rifles. And like, that was a fantasy that was born out of this. Like, it is very funny to me that if you look back at like movies from the '80s, the original Rambo was a hugely anti-cop, anti-war movie. And Rambo 2 could not possibly be more pro-war. Like it could not, and that one came out in 85 and this came out in 96. Like it's a very, very, the second term of Reagan's presidency was very, very much of like, the people in the know could see the writing on the wall with like, okay, well, the Russians are on their last legs. Like they're trying to be as scary as they were in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but that's not it anymore. However, let's keep the American public in the dark about all that and make lots of movies that make them out to be incredibly scary still. Because this is it's about a bunch of secret weapons to be used in the Cold War. Like the specific thing that they say the Johnny Five, who doesn't get that name and doesn't get that name until the end of the movie. He's just number 5 through most of it. But Johnny Five is built to be he's part of a mission codenamed Operation Gotcha Last, which is that if somehow the Ruskies send a bunch of ICBMs and blow up America, we can push one button to parachute all of these guys into Russia, and they'll just drive up Main Street, Moscow, and blow up Moscow. So if you get us, we'll get you back with this really cute talking robot. And that was like the point of the robots were made to be that. And only an act of God, a bolt of lightning from the blue, could make Johnny Five into Johnny Five and make him alive. It's
of course.
It's a very interesting premise to like who is this robot? Oh, well, he's a non-feeling killing machine until a bolt of lightning hits him, and then he's everybody's best friend. It is a very odd little premise to couch your film in.
That's just also like, I don't know a lot about electronics, but that's not what happens when a bolt of lightning hits something.
No, I mean, like there was a huge power surge which fried all his circuits.
Right.
I don't think there's
a human.
There's less than authentic science within the film. But yeah, so it
knocks Finn Balor off the top rope. And
that's right.
It turns robots into humans.
That's true. Both of those things are correct. So the movie starts with a demonstration of the power of said robots, where there's a tank that rolls over some flowers in a field because, you know, they're a Russian tank. American tanks would have not rolled over the flowers because American tanks know American tanks know the power of natural beauty, but those Russian tanks. And anyway, a bunch of APCs and one of those trucks that carries GI Joes in it. And then there's a bunch of robots that blow up all the tanks and stuff. And then we see that the people in the tanks that are blown up are actually just mannequins. And then we realize this is a demonstration of these robots called the Saint. I forget what that stands for. You can bet N in Saint stands for nuclear. But everything else, not sure. But they are being shown in a demonstration to a bunch of military types. You can tell because they're all wearing military uniforms and they got all those little dealies that say what a big shot they are on their uniform. And they're applauding because this is the greatest thing ever. We're gonna blow up some Russians. This is gonna be great. The guy leading it is Howard Marner, who we will find out later used to be a man of science and is now sold out. But he's played by the brilliant Austin Pendleton, who's a wonderful character actor from the 80s and 90s. I think his most famous appearance in a movie most people would have seen was he is the really bad attorney in My Cousin Vinny with the stutter.
So good.
And he's a brilliant comedic character actor. And I honestly love the depth of humanity that he brings to this role. There are this movie is by no means like, oh, what a work of art. But there's some good writing in it that actually delineates who these characters are and their backgrounds and stuff like that. But
it's not the framework of the movie that's bad. Like it's a clear movie, which sometimes when we get into this world of robots becoming humans, etc., what happens is the plot gets twisted and turned and lost and whatever. That's not the case here. This is just a kid's film, but it's like is a clear cut. You understand the story. There's nothing convoluted about the.
Yeah.
They convoluted about the way they tell the story.
Yeah. This is an interesting thing from T Electric Mayhem. This is also another great example of this genre. Project X. Have you seen Project X?
A long time ago, but yeah.
It is one of the saddest movies I've ever seen, where Matthew Broderick and Helen Hunt in 1987, so they're both babies, are taking care of some chimps that the Air Force exposes to lethal doses of radiation just to see what would happen if American pilots were exposed to that level of radiation. It's very sad, but also, it's the same basic idea behind this. Anyway, so there are also some politicians, bleeding hearts who don't want to blow up the world. What's wrong with these people?
Nerds.
But they would like very much to talk to the person who invented these robots and talk to them. There's a wonderful scene where the killing machine robots make a gin and tonic for Dr. Howard Marner.
The G&T.
They have a giant block of ice and they just go and it explodes into little ice. It's like glass, ice, gin, tonic, a squeeze of lime, your cocktail, Dr. Marner. Like, so great. But anyway, while they're out there having this demonstration, thunderclouds roll in. Ominous. Let's move our demonstration back to the lab. There's a bunch of little robots running around with like trays of canapes and caviar on their heads, little R2D2 things moving around. Like, would you like a cocktail?
Have the power to just invade Russia and blow up Moscow after we've already been attacked with a nuclear attack.
Right.
Like, you can find a way to waterproof these guys, or like keep resist extremely natural elements. Seems like
they're still in the prototype phase. There's only 5 of them. They haven't mass produced them yet. They'll figure all that out in post. So this is when they're trying to go and find Steve Guttenberg, who has the wonderful, absurd name of Dr. Newton Crosby, PhD.
So good.
And he has no interest in being a part of this because it is never absolutely forthrightly said, but it is very obvious that he created the design for these things, not as war machines. And he came to work for Nova Robotics in Southern Washington State because they were the best in the field at creating robotics. And then Nova Robotics basically signed a contract to work with the military after he had already gotten there and signed his contract to work exclusively for them. And he's not happy about this.
Which, I appreciated all that context, too. Like, they closed a lot of loops that you didn't necessarily have to, which I liked.
Yeah. So he's just trying to teach another robot to play piano. It has no interest in being in it, but they drag him out of that lab back there. And I guess this is where you have to start with the major problem of this film, especially looking at it from 35 years in the future. There is a character named Ben. Ben is an Indian, dots, not feathers, and an Indian immigrant. Because you can never can tell with movies like this. Indian, not Indian, Indian, who is an immigrant, apparently, although he would beg to differ with one of his malapropisms later, who is played not by an Indian actor.
Correct.
Is played by Fisher Stevens, who was actually in the Mario Brothers movie. He plays one of King Koopa's idiot helpers in that movie, and in that movie, as evidenced by his appearance in that movie, white as a sheet. This man, they painted a dude brown.
Christopher said renowned Indian actor Fisher Stevens.
Fisher Stevens. They painted a dude brown, put a wig on him, and then had him do a wacky Indian accent.
Yeah, they did, Alex.
And for the time period, there was nothing wrong with this. This is just how you did things. It's bad. It's horribly bad in hindsight. And it's just the way things were done then, and that sucks. Fisher Stevens knocks this out of the park, and that's a problem. That's a problem. He's really, really good, and the character, the malapropisms they give him are honestly very funny. Like the way that he he's trying to use American idioms and failing. And a lot of them actually make a lot of sense. Like if you could go back and like deep fake put in an actual Indian actor into this part and just have him read the same lines, there'd be zero problem with this. But it is incredibly problematic. It's unfortunate because it poorly colors an otherwise really fun movie. And I was a child, and it's horrible to say, but this was my first exposure to a person from that area of the world in a movie that I had watched. And that's bad. That's a bad thing. That's a bad thing. That like I was like, but he was one of my favorite characters in any movie through like the latter part of the first decade of my life. I loved Ben. I thought he was so much fun. He was earnest and sweet, and he was witty, and like he always had he's a good head on his shoulders and everything. Like he was a good guy. He just happened to be played by a white dude who's painted brown, and that's not good. Like that's a problem.
No, it's like so jarring. Now it is. There's nothing that can save it, but at least like he wasn't written to be a white guy playing an Indian guy. Like he was. It wasn't really. I don't know how to say this because it's so awful, but like the part wasn't written to cast any dispersions on like being Indian. Like he's a favorable character. This wasn't like made as poking fun at or anything. It's just to your point, they could have just cast someone who was Indian in this role. So it wasn't written for a white guy playing an Indian guy, which is helpful in that way, but like what were we doing as a society at this time?
Yeah, yeah, it is kind of odd because this is a thing that came to light a little bit more with a specific area of the world a couple of years ago, where they were like, hey, maybe having Hank Azaria voice Apu Nahasapima Petalan on The Simpsons for like 30 years was a bad look. But like, nobody thought any different. Like, it wasn't a thing that like it never entered anybody's brain for like 10 years at least. And then it was a very small vocal minority that was like that began to grow, and like, yeah, it's probably bad. This is why there are a lot of people who ask me to do impressions of people outside my race, and it's just like that's a no. That's just a no. This is not a thing I'm gonna do. But it is a weird thing to watch this movie. I can't imagine watching it for the first time now. But I'm watching it and I'm remembering all of these lines as he's saying them, and remembering how much I got a kick out of Ben, the character, when I was a child, and trying not to feel bad about it. But it's like, I was 9. How could I have known? I had no idea. You know, like,
I think to your point too, it's played extremely well by someone who should never have been in the position that he was in. Like, right. The character is great. Like, love the character. The way that they went about it is not great. So there's a lot of it's just so unfortunate that this is what they chose to do with it, because the character itself, the reason you fell in love with it is the character is really great. But man, oh man, the casting that they did to engineer this was not. And it does take you out of the film now watching it a lot, for me at least. Like, I just you can't stop fixating on it.
The odd thing is that the sequel is built around his character. Like, the Short Circuit 2 is about the further adventures of Johnny Five and Ben. And it is even harder to watch, particularly because it's a much worse film. But that out of the way, I guess, we'll mention more about this guy through the whole thing. But anyway, he's the one who's able to finally drag Newton Crosby out of his lab to go to this thing. Meanwhile, they're trying to get all the robot prototypes, the killing machine robots, the Saints, inside. But number 5 is still hooked up to the generator. And wouldn't you know it, a bolt of lightning strikes a power tower nearby, sending electricity surging into the generator, which then surges into number 5. And they oh my God, this thing costs $11 million. They're going to take it out of our salaries. But wait, oh my God, this son of a bitch takes a licking and keeps on ticking. I guess he's okay. But he's not okay, because he's immediately fascinated by a coffee maker on wheels that zooms by him in the hall with a little cord that is flipping around like this. He crashes into a wall. He follows the coffee maker on wheels, and ends up being like blindsided, T-boned by another robot pushing some big things of garbage, which pushes him into the garbage flatbed truck with a bunch of garbage cans on it, and he ends up going on that little truck for a ride past the main gates, and he's out there. This is of course they can't find number 5. They're very upset by this. Crosby is trying to find it, doing all kinds of coding. This is where they first bring out the little theme that they have. It's a machine, Howard. It doesn't get happy. It doesn't get sad. It doesn't laugh for your jokes. It just runs programs. So they're trying to tell him what program to run, which is to get your little butt back here program, and he won't do it. So this is when we also meet Scroder. Scroder is played by G.W. Bailey, who we saw in an earlier film, and I can't remember what movie it was, but he always plays the same character, just so you know. He's also the lieutenant in all the Police Academy movies, which is notable because Steve Guttenberg is the hero of the first couple of Police Academy movies. So they have a working relationship from that. You know something interesting? I did not know this because I was slightly concerned about the age difference in our romantic leads. I was like, because Gutenberg's got to be 40, and the year before this came out, Ali Sheedy, who we'll meet in a bit, played a high schooler in the Breakfast Club, and I was like, I'm not sure I love this age difference. Steve Guttenberg was 28 years old when this movie came out, which means he was 27 while making it. Steve,
he's not looking great at 27.
Moisturize, Steve. This is not looking great. And Ali Sheedy was only 4 years younger than him, but also playing playing a high schooler the year before, which I always found was very odd.
I feel like we run into that a lot, where it's like you were either 40 or 16. I thought that was like pretty exclusive to Greece, but we see it a lot.
No, we do. We just see it a lot. So he follows a butterfly. Number 5 does, and like jumps off of this truck out in the middle of nowhere. He says hi to some cows. He just starts on the road going away from this top secret lab in the middle of the country. And this is when Scroder, who is the chief of security at this robotics lab place, but absolutely believes that he is General Patton. He's that kind of guy. But they send out guys to go and try and get him back. Please bring it back in one piece. And then Scroder says to his little jackboot thugs, if you get a shot to take out that robot, you do it. Yes, sir. But they don't get a shot because they're bumbling fools, and they ended up just like driving directly behind him without seeing him because they're in some kind of little mini tank that can't see the road, I guess. So they just like end up pushing him along the road. And over a bridge from Washington into the state of Oregon, and he ends up jumping off the bridge and floating via parachute down on top of a moving food truck that is being driven by Ali Sheedy from the Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire and War Games.
Brat Packin'.
And she ends up driving home with him on the roof. Something very, very heavy landed on her roof, and she goes, and just keeps on driving.
Just like a grown man fell out of your car.
I mean, heavier than that, I would assume. You know what I mean? It's a very large hunk of metal. Yeah.
I feel like I'd at least pull over. That's not like, a branch.
Right. No, it's not. Yeah. So when she gets home, she finds her ex-boyfriend, Frank, who is the most ex-high school jock character in the history of films. He just is. So he's trying to coax her dog Beasley off the roof of her house And it is found out that he is trying to get the dog to put it in a crate to sell it to an animal testing lab. And that's how he's going to get even with her for her breaking up with him. I believe is the gist of this scene.
It's quite the revenge plot from our ex-jock here.
Yeah.
And a lot of things on roofs.
Yeah.
You got the car roof, you got the dog on the roof.
Yeah.
Just feels like an unnecessary revenge plot.
Right. This is also where we meet her neighbor, Mrs. Cepeda, who is trying in vain to try and get him to leave, but won't. She's very, very upset and get it the hell out of here. And she's gonna hit his Pontiac Firebird, with a baseball bat. Says I helped you with the down payment for that hunk of junk. Like, you owe me some money, he says. I owe you money. What about you owe me money? She also lives in a very large house. It does.
Yeah.
This is one of those things that I feel like is lightly implied, but never outright said. I do believe that she is some kind of orphan. Like,
that's fair.
It feels like this was her parents' house or her grandparents' house that was left to her. And because she is young, regardless of her not being a high schooler, she's definitely young. And she lives in a very big house. And has her own food truck business. This feels like here's the house, we left it to you. Also, here's some money, and she uses that money to start a business. You know, it's her business. The name of her food truck is Stephanie's Snack Shack, which I thought is good. Her name is Stephanie Speck. She also is trying to find homes for all kinds of animals. She's an animal rescue person who's trying to make sure they don't go to the pound. She will make sure everybody gets a home, including a skunk. She has a skunk. Like she has like 75 kittens, and she says that she draws the line at snakes, but she has a skunk, which feels less than.
This is also something that if you like 8-year-old Kate would have been like, "Mom, can we get a skunk so fast?"
They're really cute, except for the sticky stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like the sticky stuff is kind of a dominating.
Yeah, that's the major part. Yeah. If you can having people, you shouldn't do this. People have, but people have their like cats declawed. Could you have like your skunk distinct? Like have
I don't know.
Have the gland that sprays stuff removed. I know, I don't know, man. I'm not encouraging this. I'm not condoning it. I'm just wondering if it's a thing that people do. If they have,
I'm just saying, little Kate sees what on screen with an animal that they're not supposed to have. First thing I'm trying to do, ask my parents for one. So,
yeah. So, anyway, remember. Number 5 is just sitting on top of her roof.
Yeah, still.
The jackboot thugs came up empty. Cannot find it. For some reason, the transponder isn't working properly. Otherwise, you would think they would just like, oh, well, that's where it is. So the transponder is not working properly. They keep trying to talk to it via like binary code, and it keeps just saying malfunction, need input, malfunction, need input. There's one great part where he's looking at a Dr. Pepper billboard and is able to send via his circuits over, I don't know, like Wi-Fi. Like it must be some kind of radio waves or whatever, because it definitely predates cell phone signals or whatever. But anyway, he's able to send back via whatever network this is the slogan but also in the font that it appears on the billboard, it appears on his screen and says, "Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too?" Very funny. But they can't find him. They have no idea where he is. So this is where Stephanie hears something in the background. And goes out. She thinks it's Frank in rummaging around inside her food truck, but she goes inside and it is number 5, who she immediately thinks is an alien. I knew they'd pick me. I just knew it. Very main character energy of her.
Very much so.
She's able to coax him inside with forward. That's the only thing he responds to, but he needs input. Again, she believes it is an alien creature of some kind. Like she thinks there's like a little brain in a jar somewhere in there making the robot. She's not stupid. She knows it's a robot, but she believes it's an alien robot.
My counterpoint to that is, yes, she is. She is stupid.
Yes, you're right.
It is dumb, but that is the conclusion you would draw.
That is true. But anyway, she's trying to like tell him things about like the light switch and animals, different kinds of animals, and a floor and a ceiling. But then she shows him a picture of an aardvark in the first volume of the encyclopedia, and then he speed reads it in 10 seconds. And so she gives him all the volumes of the encyclopedia, and at the end, we're supposed to imagine it's supposed to like a little card that says 2 hours later. It's more input, Stephanie. Need more input. There isn't any more. You've read everything in the house. And so then he starts walking around like just dumping pasta out of boxes and pasta, spaghetti. But he's like, he knows everything because he's read all this stuff. So they stay up all night. She wants to go to sleep anyway. So the next morning, this is not where he makes her breakfast. That's the next morning. But anyway, he watches TV all night. So he has like,
that's right,
commercials and TV shows in his brain.
He's got pop culture in his head now.
He's got pop culture in his head now. Very specifically, he's been watching a lot of Three Stooges. This comes up later. Beasley barks at him, which makes him scared, and he backs up and falls over the porch into a chicken coop. She's not at all concerned about the chickens that may have died. But she can tell now, she actually sees, because he's upside down, she can see the thing that says Nova Robotics. And she immediately knows, because she lives in the area, a bunch of warmongers over there making things that blow up the world. She's very much a pacifist. So she calls the place.
Not to keep ragging on our dear friend here, but you live by Nova Robotics, and your conclusion was, must be an alien robot.
Right.
Not the sharpest tool in the shed there.
No.
Also, the what was I gonna say? Oh my god, I just lost my thought. I'm sorry. Continue.
It's all right. No, it's fine.
So, was it something about the chicken coop? I think it might have just been piggybacking off of like, this girl who loves animals didn't care about the chicken coop at all.
Yeah.
Didn't care about the chickadees. And then the Nova Robotics thing too of just nobody ever thinks to call the cops in any of these movies or like to inform anybody. Like, alien robot, come hang out with me. That's what I was thinking on. Was like, just sure, come inside, read all my books, toss around all my pasta, watch my TV.
Right.
Not at all concerned about what I think is an alien robotic life form just hanging out in the house.
Right.
Very weird.
So this is where the she calls them. This is, I'd like to speak to your head warmonger, please. And is there a reward for finding this thing? Because she tells him she's got it. Well, we do have a tour of our local facilities. I could probably get you a student discount, says Howard Marner. Anyway, so they're going to come pick him up. But she goes outside and sees him, and he is fascinated by a grasshopper. Says Nova is going to come and get you and take you back, and they're going to open you up, see what's going on, see what's wrong, and disassemble, blah 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 blah. And then he sees a grasshopper, and he hops with the grasshopper, and he accidentally hops onto the grasshopper and squishes it. When she's like, this can reassemble, Stephanie, reassemble grasshopper. He says with his little robot hands, reassemble, Stephanie. I can't reassemble him; he's dead. I disassemble? Yes, disassemble all over the place. Like disassemble dead? Disassemble number 5 dead. Disassemble dead. Then he just he jumps into her food truck and drives it away. And she runs after him and jumps onto the back and goes through the back of the van, and he won't stop. And he's driving all over the place. And he's being chased by. Oh, this is what they found out also, because they were sending Newton Crosby, PhD, and Ben to go and also try and get him, along with the security team. And they're able to corner him at the end of a jetty on the water by the coast. And Newton Crosby's like, no, listen, I'm going to go talk to him. He'll be fine. But they decide that they're going to open fire on the robot anyway.
Of course they are.
Because that's who they are. And Newton Crosby is able to run out into the hail of gunfire long enough for Scoter to be like, okay, hold your fire. And he's able to hit a button to power him down. And Ali Sheedy does not like this Newton Crosby. She doesn't.
No,
like him
not at all.
No, he's a liar. He said he was going to that they weren't going to hurt number 5. And she's grown very fond of him over the past 12 hours. So anyway, they are going to take him back to Nova. They're not great at distance and space in this movie, as far as this Stephanie lives just over the border from Washington into Oregon, near the Pacific Ocean. It was filmed in Astoria, Oregon, which is the same place where they filmed The Goonies. But it is an unnamed town on the Oregon coast. We don't know how far into Washington Nova Robotics is, but I don't know how far number 5 went on foot before he was pushed basically over the bridge into Oregon by the idiots driving the weird little armored vehicle. But driving back to Nova, just these 2 guys in a van, Ben in the passenger seat, and Jackboot Thug driving. Somehow he was completely powered down, but he powers himself up enough to just by the sheer force of his being alive. Number 5 takes off the bullet wounded arm, puts another one on, and rewires his switches. And then Ben and Jackboot Thug number 1 turn around and see him there. And it's like, would he kill me if I stop? Who could be knowing, says Ben. Will he kill me if I don't stop? Again, I am shrugging. It's a great line.
It is.
It's problematic, but it's a great line. And then he says, okay, I'm stopping. He tries to pull out a little pistol, but is taken away from him. And it says, he lists the manufacturer and the caliber of the gun and breaks it apart. Play-Doh, throws it over his head. And so he wants to steal the car.
Who can blame him?
Jackboot Thug says, "What should we do now?" Again, this is a fantastic bit of this. The acting is great. The line is great. It's just problematic because you painted a white guy brown.
There it is.
But he says, "What do we do?" Well, I do not know about you, but I am planning to scream and run. And then he jumps out of the car and he rounds the front of the vehicle to run and dive into a ditch on the opposite side of the vehicle. And about halfway through his sprinting, he says, "Ooh," and then dives into the ditch. So when he says, "I am planning to scream and run," what he means by scream is at some point, I'm going to say, "Ooh." It's funny. But it's just, you can't do it. So then the robot steals the vehicle and drives away with it. And then, because presumably this is the only route back to Nova, Newton Crosby, PhD, pulls up in a different van and sees them on the side of the road playing tiddlywinks. Because they don't know what they're going to do because there's no cell phones. And why would you ever walk to a payphone? That's not a thing they're going to do. So they're just waiting there for Newton Crosby. And then Ben stands up and he's like, he smooths at his hair. "Hello, honey. What is for dinner?" Yeah. It's funny. I'm sorry, just the way he does it. It is funny. He's wrong. It's very wrong, but it is funny. But so this is where we find out that she wants to Ali Sheedy, back at home after her ordeal that night, wants to have a bath. Is drawing a bath for herself and her 75 kittens and her one skunk. And then there's a knock at the door, and it's all of the local TV reporters, none of whom tried to call her first. They just all show up on her doorstep, want to ask her about the robot. "Are you aware there's a $25,000 reward?" "Since when?" "She turned the damn thing in. And it's not her fault it escaped again. She should get $25,000 reward the first time." But you know who's listening to that broadcast? Old Frank, who's at the pool hall, $25,000. And you know where that robot is. And for $25,000, I'm damn sure going to know where it is too. So this is when number 5 shows back up again. There's another knock at the door, but this time it's him. He used camouflage, which is a branch held in front of his face.
There's a lot of cute little nuances like that in this. Like
there are.
Like how you can know something without applying it correctly is just like a fun little theme that we get throughout this.
Yeah. This is where John Badham is the director. His most famous piece of work that he directed, not this movie. His most famous piece of work that he directed was Saturday Night Fever, and you know that because he put a lot of clips of his own movie into his movie. This is very much an HBK thing, where he's doing tributes to himself. Tribute spots to himself. But this is where they watch Saturday Night Fever, and he learns to dance. And they dance together to More Than a Woman. It's very sweet, bordering on romantic. It's cute. It's cute. I mean, it's cute. I don't know what to say, but other than that, but it's cute.
It's cute. It's nice having a cute robot.
Yeah. And so this is where he explains to her, number 5 is alive, not malfunction. And then the next morning, she wakes up and he is making her breakfast badly. But he's trying. He follows the direction on the box of Bisquick of how to make pancakes. He just forgets to crack the eggs before he puts them in the batter. And he's using his super turbo speed to do the little egg beater. So there's batter everywhere.
Flying
and
everywhere.
He's making hash browns while they're still in the box. By brown one side, then turn over. And he just turns the whole thing over with the pan now on top. He's trying. God bless him.
Cutest. There's like these little human qualities in our little robot friend.
Yes.
Our robot human friend.
And this is where Frank shows up with a rifle. And he wants to get the damn. And so he's like, he comes in and she plays dumb to try and get him out of there.
Frank's dumb. So
and she what do you call it? She gives him trigger phrases she knows that will cause Johnny Five to run. Tell him where, like, I'm here to take you home, buddy. And tell him where home is. Home is Nova. And of course that makes Johnny Five freak out because he knows that means disassemble. Disassemble means dead. So he runs away and she tries to jump on top of him to keep Frank from following. By the time he gets outside, Johnny Five has disassembled his Pontiac Firebird in just the glorious fashion.
Yeah, it's great.
So he starts using his hunting rifle to shoot at him, but he's like deflecting it with like a brake pad or something. I don't know what it is. I'm not good with cars. But he's able to like deflect bullets. And he's doing a John Wayne impression. And I'll say there, Pilgrim, that likes a parted my hair. Hey, want to play rough? I can sure oblige you. That's my bad impression of Johnny Five's impression of John Wayne. And he does also he does the scene from some old gangster movie where he's flipping a coin. You ratted on your friends, Frankie, and that means you ain't got no friends no more because your enemies don't respect you.
A delightful 90s trope of like I have to have this weird character montage thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like we saw in the Ernest movies.
Yep. So then Frank has run out of bullets, but he's picked up the tailpipe of his own vehicle and uses it to batter poor Johnny Five with. But he knocks him over and he races up over his head. And Ali Sheedy flies in from off screen with a spear to rival Goldberg's. just right up under the rib cage, knocks him off his feet. Oh, it's a great one. It's honestly one of the best spears in all of it's all.
Ron Breaker could never.
I am not kidding when I say it's better than any spear Edge has ever given anybody ever.
Yeah, it's really good.
That is true. So he's about to punch Stephanie. So then Johnny Five says, "So not disassemble Stephanie." So he strategically uses his laser to shoot all the tailpipe until it is no longer very viable as a weapon, and then he shoots the bill off of his cap, and he shoots the heels of his cowboy boots, and then he shoots the belt buckle, which makes his pants fall down.
Yeah, it does.
Which is the ultimate insult in 80s movies. His pants fell down. You're embarrassed now, aren't you, there, mean guy?
Yeah.
He says, I'm calling Nova and I'm calling the cops. You know you're gonna call, and it's for you, you little pain in the neck. Don't you ever come crawling back to me because it's over. This is the last time we ever see Frank.
Yes, it is.
Frank is never. It does feel like that was a monologue that says we'll be seeing that guy again, but we never do.
We did not see that guy again.
Yeah. So this is where they try and flee again. This is where number 5 suggests that they call Newton Crosby, PhD, and meet with just him because he believes he can convince Newton Crosby that get him on their side. Oh, this is also, I forgot, this is where they're going to, Ben and Newton Crosby, PhD, are going to steal a van and go look for him. And Howard Marner is waiting for them in the van. I knew you were going to do this. I told you if you left your terminal, you'd be fired. And he's got a gun. Let's get back in there. And Howard, you know you're bluffing. But I also says, like, 20 years ago, you'd be out there on the road looking for him with us. And I was going to say, this is why I thought that Steve Guttenberg's character was 40, because when you say 20 years ago, you were 8. So yeah. I don't know how you know about Howard Marner. And you could say 5 years ago, when I first came to work for you, you were an idealist who knew what you were trying to do. But I'm not an idealist anymore. I'm not even a scientist. I'm a businessman. You sold out. But he's holding a gun on him. It's like, don't think I won't do it. Howard, you know you're bluffing. All right, I'm bluffing. That was a great moment. He's like, then he tries to put himself in front of the car. Says, now I know you're bluffing. You're not going to run me over. You're going to have to kill me. So then he backs up and goes around him. It's a cute little maneuver.
It is.
I think it's an earlier scene, but there's a moment where Ben says, you know what, they have a saying in my country, something, something, something. And then he says, hey, I never actually asked you, where are you from? He says, Bakersfield originally, which is funny in and of itself, because with that accent, there's no way he's from Bakersfield.
No, absolutely not.
He was definitely born someplace else. But he says, no, I mean, like, you know, your ancestors. Oh, them, Pittsburgh. And there's a wonderful, like Steve Guttenberg asked the question and then looks back down at his notes and then hears Pittsburgh and goes, there's this wonderful double take. Again, funny lines, just you can't paint a guy brown if you're going to have him deliver those lines.
Correct.
That's all I'm saying. When Newton Crosby, PhD, and Ben get the call that they have been invited to it's Newton Crosby at least has been invited to a one-on-one meeting. They are at a very famous location in Oregon. I grew up in Oregon, so I know this very well. I've been there many times. It is the Columbia River overlook. It is very far inland. I looked it up to get from the coast, because this is the city where Stephanie Speck lives is on the ocean. You can see it from her house. You can see the Pacific Ocean. To get from the Pacific Ocean to the Columbia River overlook is 2 hours by vehicle. It is a wonderful location, and it has a really cool view because it's an overlook. And they wanted it for the movie, but the practicality of them driving back, like driving that far to look for number 5 by itself, and then driving back the other way, the practicality is not there.
Sure.
They meet at a little cowboy bar to talk about number 5 or whatever. She's trying to convince him of all of this. The scene between them is supposed to signify that, like, they're starting to, like, like each other, or
They're
whatever.
warming up to each other.
They're warming up to each other. We can see in the bar there's Schroeder undercover and all of his jackboot thugs undercover. But that's not the most important part of this scene. The most important part of this scene is that Johnny Five is out in the woods around this place, and he's pretending to be Vin Scully calling a Dodger game as he's using a stick to hit rocks into the forest. But then he realizes that number 1, 2, and 3 are there. They're not there to kill him, to destroy him. They're there to deactivate him, which is a hard thing to do when you're shooting lasers that we've seen can blow up tanks. It's
Correct.
a weird thing. I don't know if they have those lasers set to stun or whatever, but he one by one, he tricks them and deactivates them, and then with fun stuff as well, with little quips and little insults back and forth. And then
there's a lot of really cute little scenes in this movie. Like it's nice to have a robot that you're like warmed up to in a sense.
Yeah. He says anyway, you can see them reprogramming them. You don't know what's going on. And then he jumps through the wall of the bar, grabs the girl, does this. He takes one of the little bar tables, shoves it in the face of jackboot number 1, and goes, "Your table, sir. Here's your table, sir." And then Schroeder grabs him and says, "No autographs, please, sir," and shoves him away. It was very funny. And then he jumps to another wall while carrying the girl. They get into a van and drive away. And they're hot on the trails of them is Schroeder and his men. So he's able to use his laser to cut down a tree, which then stops them all from following. And then numbers 1, 2, and 3 show up, and they've been programmed to be the Three Stooges. And Newton Crosby watches this and goes, "What the heck? How's that?" He's very bemused by this. And this is also when Ben shows up later, and he describes it, like all this stuff, like it's just not possible, and he's just in awe of this. And Ben's like, "So if if you are thinking what I am thinking, you are thinking that this lady chick is some kind of super hacker." No, she's not a super hacker, because she was sitting with me the whole time, and there's no way she could have done this while she's sitting. So it must have been the other robot, which is not possible. But that's when Johnny Five shows up and uses Ben's full name, which is Benjamin Jabatuya. Jabatuya feels like that's a jab to you. And it just feels like it's a no. Anyway,
no.
Get out. And so let's not talk. We don't see Ben anymore. No more Ben for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like some characters just disappear.
Yeah. But he brings Newton Crosby up to the high desert. By the way, the high desert from Oregon is a good 6-7 hours by car from where they were, but we're not going to talk about that because they obviously filmed it in California, so who cares? But this is where they go out together, and over the course of several hours, the robot convinces the designer of this robot that he's alive. And he's trying to talk about like what you've been programmed to do this. Like, I cannot do what I've been programmed to. I cannot disassemble. Like, it's wrong. And Newton Crosby, PhD, not know this? Very cute. And he says, "Well, of course I know it's wrong to kill, but who told you?" "I told me." And it's one of the, it's honestly it's one of the most profound moments of the entire film, is just the idea of that we need someone to tell us that it's wrong to hurt another being to the point that they disassemble dead. And we don't. Like, that is the that's like the prime directive of life. Is a thing that we come into this world knowing that we shouldn't do this. And it is very profound that the robot says, "I told me." And so they're going back and forth about all of these things. He does like a Rorschach test. And then I think perhaps even more problematic than the existence of Benjamin Jabatuya, played by Fisher Stevens, while painted brown and doing a wacky accent, is the fact that the one thing that convinces Newton Crosby, PhD, that number 5 is in fact alive is that he tells an anti-Semitic joke and number 5 laughs at it. The one thing that proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that number 5 is alive is that he laughs at an anti-Semitic joke. And I feel like that's probably not
great.
The baseline you want to create for whether or not something is alive is whether or not they laugh at an anti-Semitic joke.
That's not great. For several reasons. But yeah, that
I mean, as anti-Semitic jokes go, it's fairly gentle in its anti-Semiticness.
Sure.
But it's definitely an anti-Semitic joke.
You to be like the linchpin of this whole thing kind of hinges on this. What can we make it? Even a gently anti-Semitic joke, not great.
Yeah. But this is what finally convinces Newton Crosby that he is alive. And the reason is because it is a spontaneous emotional response, which would not be possible for a robot in this thing. He'd have to be programmed to laugh at something or whatever.
Right.
Okay, fine. And this is where they are surprised that the military has found them, led by Schroeder, under the direction of Howard Marner. And so they leave Johnny 5, number 5, in the back of the van. The van is rustling back and forth. I suppose like it's supposed to show that he's very scared because he's shuddering so much. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, Stephanie and Dr. Newton Crosby, PhD. Oh, they're so happy that the robot laughed at the anti-Semitic joke that they share a kiss. It's the thing that allows them to love each other, is that a robot laughed at an anti-Semitic joke. I'm just stating the facts. There's a robot.
Draw your own conclusions.
A robot laughed at an anti-Semitic joke, and now Ali Sheedy and Steve Guttenberg can fall in love.
It's called romance, Alex. Look.
It's it's called romance in the 80s. Look it up. So anyway, they're out of the van. He's trying to explain to Howard, listen, let me take him back to the lab. I'll prove to you what I'm saying is right. And Howard says, it's too late for that, Crosby. You know what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. So Howard is trying to actually have a dialogue, a hostage negotiation with Crosby and Stephanie. And then some jackboot thugs sneak around behind them, pick them up, and remove them away from this thing. And they're going to start just opening fire on this van that has the robot inside. But out of the back of the van jumps number 5, who flees down a dirt road, being chased by a helicopter shooting missiles at it. And he's actually going to beat the helicopter until the helicopter turns around and shoots at him as opposed to chasing him. Shoots at him and blows him up with a missile and explodes him into many, many pieces. And And Ali Sheedy, in perhaps her greatest moment as an actress, absolutely loses it that this robot is dead. It is the most devastating thing that could ever possibly happen to her.
She's like almost an implied orphan, to your point.
Right. Oh yeah, she's definitely lost everybody who she's ever loved. The only thing,
and now she was like, you know what won't hurt is if I get attached to something not human.
Filling the void of her parents, her 12 brothers and sisters, her grandparents, they've all been killed in a horrible boating accident. And they left to her this house and some money, which she used to buy a food truck and call it Stephanie's Snack Shack. She's filling the void with 75 kittens and a skunk. Her life is a shambles. And she finds this robot who teaches her how to love again.
And who makes an anti-Semitic joke that opens the door to kissing.
Right. I forgot about that part. But it is very effective when the army guys, the real army guys, not just like Schroeder's jackboot thugs who run the security detail.
No, the like real ones.
Actual army guys are walking back to their jeeps, trying to trade limbs and face parts and tread of the robot. Like, hey, I got this one. Look, I can make his hand do this. Yeah, but I got the face. And so like she just like, get me out of here. I gotta get out of here. So they get back in the van, and drive off. Schroeder is like, now that, my friend, is how you kick ass, he says to Howard Marner. It's like years of research down the tubes, and you want to throw a party about it. And he says, just doing my job, sir. Well, maybe you could, from now on, you could do it somewhere else. And I was like, if there was an option to fire this dude, why was it not done 2.5 acts ago? Like, this guy directly disobeyed a bunch of the shit that you wanted to do from the beginning of the movie.
Over and over again. Yeah. And
now, Howard Marner, you finally grown some balls.
He's had enough, Alex.
Yeah. So they're driving off in Nova van, and they have a little scene where he says, "Are you going to be okay?" "Not for a while. I'm sorry you had to quit Nova, but I'm glad that you're not working for that place anymore." "Yeah, that's right. I had to quit. As part of my severance package, they gave me this van full of robot parts." I just don't know how that would have worked. Yeah. So he says, "What are you going to do now?" My dad left me some land up in Montana. I thought I'd go out there, maybe start a ranch or something." And then from in the back of the van, we hear, "Sounds great. Let's go." And Johnny Five is back there. It turns out that the thing that got blown up was not Johnny Five, but a decoy of himself he had made in 45 seconds out of spare robot parts in the back of that van.
J5.
So they've decided they're going to go move to Montana, start a ranch,
raise a robot, and also Stephanie is going to bring her 75 kittens and one skunk. Of course.
He says, "Do you like animals?" "Well, how many animals are we talking about here?" And he says, "Great, I'll drive. You two work this out." And it's a very cute thing. And then they drive away, and it's great. And I forget exactly what happens in Short Circuit 2, but like 20 minutes into the film, after we've established Ben is like, he's now making toys. He's like Santa Claus. I don't know. But anyway, his new life in some metropolis. It's filmed in Toronto, but they can't call it Toronto because it's got to be America, obviously.
Obviously.
Johnny Five shows up like in a crate because Stephanie and Newton Crosby, PhD, mailed him to Ben. I don't know what was going on that ranch, but they were like, "Get this robot the hell out of here." And so yeah, so that's Short Circuit. I don't think I missed too much.
No, that's pretty much it. It's really endearing. Like, it's a really, aside from painting a white man brown, like it has a lot more kind of like heartstrings than a lot of the ones, because we've seen so many types of this film, right? Like these tropes a little bit. It's fun that the robot is a very like human character. It's almost like with Marcel the Shell, where there's like a very well executed emotional appeal about it. The acting performances outkick the coverage of this film, which helps a lot. And the clarity around the story they're telling is good. And I feel like when all of those things are in play, you can at least like start to invest in the movie, kids movie, adult movie, whatever. Like, so definitely, I would say certainly I would keep the flick.
Yeah. I would keep the flick too.
It's hard to keep a flick when they painted a white man brown.
That's a really hard part of it.
It's like, how do we
but there's
keep
like
the flick?
It's I do think that everybody, as you said, like the acting really outkicks the coverage. Everyone does a great job in it. All the characters are really clearly drawn. There's like I said, there's a lot of like, you can feel the story that they haven't included. It's so clearly implied that like there's a lot of really great stuff here of the relationship between these characters and where things change for them and why they're unhappy and where they are there, and there's some really good stuff. I also think I think Ali Sheedy makes the movie work because it's hard to believably act like you're falling for a robot, like in a platonic way, like it's the brother she never had or the brother that died horribly in a boating accident. Like it does feel like it's her kid brother and she really wants to protect him. And there's some really honest work there from Ali Sheedy, who's working opposite a robot,
right?
Like a 1980s movie robot. That's tough, difficult stuff to do,
and not like the most fleshed out character otherwise, right? Like she's got her skunk and her cats, and but there's not a lot of meat on the bone with the rest of the character too. So the fact that she's able to do that without a lot of additional traits, like just two-dimensional woman that dated a jock, is kind of like loves animals, as a pacifist. She does a really all the acting performances in this are pretty good. Like it definitely helps it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I honestly just I think that it really succeeds where a lot of other movies of the time did not in imbuing its non-human character with as many human traits as possible. She says at the end, he says, "Number 5 is a dumb name. Want to be Johnny 5." And that's it. That's literally like the second to last line of the entire movie.
Yeah, he gets a name.
And everybody knows him as Johnny 5, but he's only ever really called Johnny 5 in Short Circuit 2, which a lot of less people have watched. But everyone knows him as Johnny 5.
Yeah. I wasn't like, oh, I'm salivating for the sequel with this.
Yeah, it's also just not at all nearly close to, like, it's so weird. Like,
is that sequential to the movie as a sequel?
No,
it's a spin-off of itself.
Ben is making toys that look like little miniature number 5s. Like that's what he's doing with his life now. That he's and again, I don't remember why, but Stephanie and Newton Crosby, PhD, send him Johnny Five in a crate, and then Ben and Johnny Five get into hijinks while trying to foil a bank robbery. That is the plot of the movie.
How didn't we do that?
I don't know.
Ooh,
Maybe we have to do that. Maybe we have to do that one.
We might have to. No. We might have to come back for that.
We'll have to come back for that one. All right, everybody. We're keeping the flick in because honestly, even with
huge asterisk,
with the painted brown white man and the anti-Semitic joke being the like Deus Ex Machina of the entire film, even with all of that, I still recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
It's a fun watch. It's a fun watch. And certainly comparatively to a lot of the other things we've watched on here. Let's say.
Yeah, that's true. That. All right. So we're keeping the flick in.
Keeping it in.
And next week we'll probably get the flick out of here. Till next week, everybody. Have a good week. Bye.